In the once thriving villages of western Ghana, where the scent of cocoa farms once filled the air and children played in clear streams, the land now breathes sorrow. The sun that cast its golden light on vibrant fields of maize and cassava now beats relentlessly on the barren earth. Scarred by greed and neglect, in the hearts of Ghanaians, where hope once thrived, there now lives a quiet desperation. The Ankobra River had been the lifeblood of the region for centuries. Elders told stories of the days when the water ran crystal clear, when fishermen pulled nets heavy with tilapia, and women sang as they washed clothes along the river banks. The river, they said, was a gift from the ancestors, a sacred source of sustenance. But now, the river was dying. It was no longer the sparkling blue stream of memory, but a murky, poisonous flow. Its waters had turned brown, laced with chemicals that glistened under the harsh sun, a reminder of the silent killer that had invaded the land. The fish had long since disappeared, and those who dared to touch the water suffered rashes and sores. Women no longer sang as they worked by the river, for there was no work to do and no joy to be found. The culprit was no mystery. Illegal mining, known locally as galamsey, had swept across the region like a plague. The land had become pockmarked with deep pits, left by the miners who sought gold without care for the destruction they left behind. The chemicals used in the mining process, mercury, cyanide, and lead, had seeped into the water and poisoned it. It wasn't just the river that was dying, it was the people too. Amma had cradled her newborn daughter, Ya, as tears streamed down her face. Ya was her first child, the hope of her family, and the symbol of a future Amma had dreamed of. But when Ya was born, her tiny limbs were twisted and incomplete. Amma had cried out in horror when she first saw her daughter, but the midwife had only sighed, her face a mask of resignation. Another one, the midwife had whispered, shaking her head. It was the water. Amma had heard stories. Of course, everyone had. Children being born with deformities, men and women collapsing suddenly in the fields, their lungs scarred by the air they breathed. The elderly, once strong and full of wisdom, were dying in their beds, their bodies ravaged by unseen poisons. But Amma had clung to hope, praying that her child would be spared. Now, holding Ya in her arms, she felt that hope slipping away, replaced by a deep and unshakable grief. Kofi sat by the side of the road, his eyes scanning the horizon as he waited for his shift to begin. He had been a farmer once, growing yams and maize on the land passed down to him from his father. But the land was barren now, its soil poisoned by the same chemicals that had killed the river. When the land stopped producing, Kofi had no choice but to join the galamsey workers. At first, he resisted. He knew the damage it was doing to the land, the water, and the people. But when his children went to bed hungry night after night, he could no longer afford to say no. Now, he spent his days digging deep into the earth, searching for gold that would never belong to him. The pay was meager, barely enough to feed his family, but it was all he had. The work was dangerous. Many had died when the pits collapsed, trapping them beneath the earth. But even that was better than watching his children starve. As As Kofi sat there, he thought of the leaders who promised to protect the citizens and lead them to prosperity. But most of the leaders had big houses surrounded by wealth and power while their people suffered. The politicians, the ones who were supposed to represent the people, had turned a blind eye to the devastation caused by Galamsey. Many of them lined their pockets with profits from the illegal mining, selling the country's resources to foreign corporations while their own people starved. Over time, the leaders once hailed as a beacon of hope had become a symbol of everything that was wrong with the country. They no longer spoke of the people suffering. They no longer visited the villages. They no longer cared. Nana Yeboah, the village elder, sat in front of his small, crumbling home, watching the sun sink below the horizon. The sky was painted with hues of orange and red, but there was no beauty in it for Nana. He had lived through much in his 70 years, but nothing had prepared him for the slow death of his people. He had seen the rise of Galamsey, the destruction it brought. He had watched as the rivers turned brown and fish disappeared. He had seen the children born sick and twisted, their bodies broken by poisons in the water. He had buried too many of them. The village was a shadow of its former self. Many had left, fleeing to the cities in search of work and safety. But there was no safety in the cities either. The air was polluted, the jobs scarce. Those who remained in the village were too old, too sick, or too poor to leave. Nana had tried to speak out. He had written letters. He had traveled to the capital to beg the government to intervene, but no one listened. The politicians were too busy enriching themselves. Now, Nana's heart was heavy with the weight of all he had seen. He feared for the future of his people, for the children who were being born into a world poisoned by greed. He feared that the day would come when there would be no one left to carry on the traditions, the stories, and the memories of their ancestors. All that remained was hope, but even hope, Nana knew, was fading. In the heart of the capital, protests had erupted across the country as the people demanded action, demanded that their leaders saved them from the destruction of their land and the poisoning of their children. The leaders turned away from the protesters, retreating into their luxurious homes. They did not want to hear their cries. They did not want to see their pain. They knew what was happening. They had heard reports, seen the pictures of children born without limbs, of rivers that ran brown and dead. But what could they do? The system was too corrupt, too far gone. The profits from Galamsey were too great, the cost of stopping it too high. So the rulers did nothing, and as they sat in their luxurious homes, the river wept, and the people of Ghana wept with it. The sun rose again the next day, casting its light on the land that had been blessed with abundance, but was now cursed by greed. The river, once the lifeblood of the people, was a reminder of what had been lost. And as the people of Ghana struggled to survive, their only hope was hope that might never come. Hope that their leader would remember them. Hope that the land could heal. Hope that the children born tomorrow would not suffer the same fate as those born today. But hope, like the river, was fading, and without it, there would be nothing left. In the distance, the sound of machines grinding into the earth echoed through the air. and the river wept once more.